Namanda, namanda, namanda. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for our Sunday service for this week. I thought, we've got this online, it's on YouTube, and so I think a lot of you have been coming to the temple for years, maybe even decades, right? Others, maybe not so long. Maybe some people, I know some people this is the first time they've ever seen a Buddhist service here on our YouTube channel here at Buddhist Church of Oakland. So I thought I'd talk a little bit just about the Sutra chanting. Maybe, over the next few weeks, maybe not every week, but like to talk a little bit about the various aspects of the service. So one of the most important ones, maybe the most important one, we call Sutra chanting. And so sutras are the words of the Buddha, the words of Shakyamuni Buddha. And Shakyamuni was a really interesting teacher. He responded to questions. That's the way he usually taught, was someone would ask a question, and so he would respond. And so there's a whole bunch of sutras because a whole bunch of people ask questions, right? And so he talked about all different kind of stuff. He answered each person what they needed, right? That he didn't just have a single dogma that he said, this is what it is, just memorize it, right? That he really spoke to each person. And so we get this broad range of teachings of the Buddha. And so that sometimes we hear the term 84,000 Dharma gates, right? That there's all these different ways to encounter the teachings of the Buddha Dharma. Right? And so the sutras are kind of the records of those sermons that he gave, those expositions of the Dharma, right? He was explaining the Dharma to people so that they could hear this and really hear it and bring it into their lives, right? And so what we're doing is reciting the words of the Buddha. That's another really important aspect, is that when Buddha was alive 2,500 years ago in India, they didn't use writing. It was all oral, verbal, and memorized, right? And it wasn't until 400 or 500 years later in India that they really began to use writing. So for the first several centuries after Buddha passed away, the teachings were memorized and passed on in that way. So ever since the time of the Buddha, or soon after, people were memorizing and reciting the teachings. So that's one of the most basic Buddhist things to do, is to recite the sutras. And so the one we did today is called Ju-sei-ge. It's not really a sutra in itself. It's one kind of poem or a set of verses from within a sutra. So it comes from the larger Sutra of Immeasurable Life, or larger Sukhavati Vyuha Sutra. It's a sutra about Amida Buddha and Amida Buddha's Buddha land or Pure Land. And so, it's a long sutra. That's why they call it the larger one. It actually takes up 2 rolls. If you had the scrolls, the smaller sutra and the Contemplation Sutra are 1 scroll each. The larger sutra is 2 scrolls. And so we do Amida Sutra, the smaller one, on the Shotsuki Memorial Service days, and that takes about 10 minutes to chant. No, more than that, maybe more like 15 minutes to chant the whole thing. But Ju-sei-ge is only one small part of the larger sutra, but it is really important, and it expresses the vows of Amida Buddha, or actually Amida Buddha, but before it became Buddha. So Amida Buddha when he was still a bodhisattva. Right, this Buddha in training. So he was a king, and then he decided, I want to become a Buddha. And so part of that process is to make vows, to make this kind of promise, or it's almost a contract. This is what I want my Buddhahood to be like. This is what I want my Buddha land to be like. This is what I want the beings who are in that land to be like. And then also, how are you going to get there? How are you going to get to this Buddha land? And so that's kind of what the sutra talks about. But Ju-sei-ge expresses this in kind of verse, and expresses the vows in a kind of abbreviated form. So if you're able to have this book There's links to it that we've sent out, and it's the Shin Buddhist Service Book. And then inside, it has the sutra, the Chinese characters with Japanese pronunciation up here, the Japanese pronunciation in English characters, or romaji, down here, and then translation down here. So that's one thing you can do. You can look and read the translation, right? It's interesting, though, while we're chanting, though, we're not necessarily chanting to understand. We're not, sometimes people, I think, it's kind of like, what am I saying? I don't even know what I'm saying. So it is kind of important to dig in and learn what this says. But while we're chanting, while we're doing this together, it's not essential that you understand the meaning as you're chanting it. It's more that we're chanting together. Right? It's more that we're doing what Buddhists have done for millennia now, right? That we're reciting the teachings of the Buddha, we're reciting the words of the Buddha, so that we can really kind of internalize them, but also that we're reciting the words of the Buddha together. That's what's kind of sad with, being stuck at home or, having to stay at home and shelter in place, is that we can't be together. Right? We can't be together in person, but we can still be together in spirit, I believe. And so, when you listen to the sutra chanting, you might want to chant along with it, right? And that way, at least we have this kind of connection to the teachings. Right? So take some time to read the translation. It's really an expression. It talks about wisdom, but I think it's more about compassion. Right? It's talking about this fully realized Buddha. When I become a Buddha, I'm going to have wisdom and compassion. And my wisdom is going to be like this, and my compassion is going to be like this. And it's because of that wisdom, and especially compassion, that we have Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, that we have Pure Land Buddhism, that we have the Nembutsu. Right, that we're able to recite Namo Amida Butsu, which means I take refuge in Amida Buddha. It's reciting the name of the Buddha. It's praising the Buddha, taking refuge in trusting in the Buddha. Right? And so we say Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandab, 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 or we recite it before, after the chanting, but also during, at the end, right? Namandabu, that is Namo Amida Butsu. Right? And it's in reciting this that we kind of become part of this new way, right? If you haven't met it before, it's new. If you've been doing it your whole life, it's not new. But if it really touches you, it could be new, right? That it's wisdom and compassion of the Buddha coming to me, right? That actually all the Buddhas throughout the universe are saying Namo Amida Butsu. So when we hear that, when we encounter that, when we experience that, right, then we say Namo Amida Butsu back. Right? It's really, I feel like it's something bigger than just our material reality, right? It's this wisdom and compassion of the Buddha that pervades everywhere. But as an unenlightened being, foolish being, I'm usually not aware of that. And yet, Namo Amida Butsu, it comes into my life, right? Namo Amida Butsu, it comes out of my mouth. Namo Amida Butsu, we can say it together. We can say it any time. There's no set time. And so the sutras are part of where that message comes from. Also the words of the 7 masters that Shinran Shonin chose. Also Shinran Shonin himself and those that came afterwards, whether Renyo Shonin or ministers of Buddhist Church of Oakland or other BCA temples or wherever, or even just followers who've really heard it. Right? We can learn about this in many ways, either by studying the actual words, but also trying to live it. It doesn't mean necessarily that you have to do anything different. You live your life like you've always lived it. And yet, Namo Amida Butsu, maybe something's different. Namo Amida Butsu, maybe I never thought to think of this in a different way. Namo Amida Butsu, maybe I never really thought to think from someone else's perspective. Usually it's just my own. Right? And so just this simple Namo Amida Butsu, this process of sutra chanting or sutra recitation, repeating the words of the Buddha, reciting the words of the Buddha, right? Maybe works a change in me. If it's just up to me, I don't know where I would be now, right? I encountered the Dharma, almost 30 years ago now, for the first time. And I really think that this energy, this wisdom and compassion energy coming from the Buddha has transformed me. Right? I'm still, in so many ways, still me, right? And yet, maybe something different. Maybe something I'm able to transcend what my normal limitations would be, even though in many ways I remain limited as well. So I want to thank you very much for joining us for our online service, and hope you're all doing well. And why don't we conclude by reciting the name of the Buddha. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Naman Dabutsu. Naman.